Alright, what's going on? Now, today we're going to talk about hyperbolas. And before we get started, I just want to explain something real quick. We're going to examine three graphs. The first thing we graphed was a circle. Now, when you have a circle, I want to talk about the foci. Both focal points are located at the center, hence why the radii are the same. Now with an ellipse, what happens is you pull these focal points out or up and down. So it stretches your circle. Alright, so now your focal points have moved out, and in a sense your graph has been stretched. So think about if I grab my fingers on these two focal points and I pull them out in both directions, this is your resulting graph. Now, today we're going to talk about hyperbolas. Imagine if I kept pulling the foci out even further, so far that this entire graph would collapse to a straight line. Alright, when that happens, our graph actually breaks and splits. So what I mean by that is eventually, if you kept pulling these out, alright, our graph would break down to a straight line, and then it flips, and it'll look something like this, with your focal points being outside now. Alright, so it's a little funky and it's hard to explain here to the computer, but I'll show you again in class tomorrow. We'll talk more about how that affects the appearance and the properties of the graph. Alright, so this is a hyperbola, and that's what we're going to focus on today. Now, we're going to start with graphing form. Alright, now this one actually has two types of graphing forms. Okay, the first one is, and it's going to look similar to an ellipse, is the opposite of x minus h over over r sub x, the semi-minor or major, plus y minus k over r sub y squared equals 1. Now, if the negative sign, okay, is with your x value, this graph would open up and down. Right. Or you could get this, x minus h over r sub x squared minus y minus k over r sub y squared equals 1. Now this graph would open left and right. Alright, and that's because the opposite is with the y term. Okay, so the way I like to think about it is the positive dominates. Alright, positive dominates. Dominator. Now, why I say that is because up and down is associated with the y-axis. Hence, if there's a positive with the y, it's up and down. The positive is with the x here, so it opens left and right, which is the x-axis. So that's an easy way that I use to remember it. Instead of focusing on the negative, I focus on the positive, and that's the one that dominates. Alright, so let's take a look at one of these. So example 1. Negative 5x squared plus 20x plus 3y squared plus 6y equals negative 58. Alright, so we need to complete the square and put in graphing form just as we always do. So my x's are grouped together and my y's are grouped together already. So I'm going to take out a negative 5. Remember, you always got to take out whatever number's in front because you want your x squared alone. So I got x squared minus 4x, because 20 divided by negative 5 is minus 4x. Plus, I'm going to take out a 3 here and get y squared plus 2y. Leave my blank. Alright, half of negative 4 is 2 squared. So I'm going to add 4. Half of 2 is 1 squared. I'm going to add 1. Now over here, 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. So that's where that's coming from. And then here, 1 times 3 is 3. Alright, we should be getting pretty good at that. Completing the square should be second nature by now. So factor x minus 2 squared plus 3y plus 1 squared equals negative 58 minus 20 is negative 78 plus 3 is negative 75. Alright, just like ellipses, we want a 1 on the right side. So I'm going to divide everything by negative 75. Alright, so when we simplify, we get negative and negative is a positive, so I get 1 over 15. So x minus 2 squared over 15. 3 divided by negative 75 is minus 1/25. And the y plus 1 stays. Equals 1. Now remember, we have to write these as squared terms. Right? Because this whole thing is squared. So how do we write 15 as a square? Well, that one's not pretty. It's not a perfect one, so we got to write root 15. Because think about it. If you multiply that back out, if you would square root 15, you'd be left with 15. Alright, and then over here, we got a nice pretty number in 25. So it's over 5 squared. So now, that's my information I need to graph. That's my graphing form. Alright, so my center would be opposite inside, 2, negative 1. The radius of your x is the square root of 15. Now, that's approximately 3.9. Just type in your calculator. I always like the exact answer. You know that. I like the exact solution. However, when you go to graph, root 15 isn't something that comes natural to us. So if we got to plot the point, it's easier to plot 3.9. And r sub y is 5. Now, when setting this up to graph, it's a little different than what we've seen before. Set up your coordinate plane. Now, the first thing we're going to do is plot our center, which is 2, negative 1. And then we're going to apply our radii. Alright, so my x is 3.9, so 1, 2, 3, almost 4. 1, 2, 3, almost 4. So x is left and right, and then I got 5. So I'm going to go up 5, and I'm going to go down 5. Now with that, I'm going to draw a box. And I wish I had a ruler right now. Alright, and then with your box, you're going to create asymptotes. Alright, and your asymptotes are going to go through the corners of your box. So they're straight lines, straight linear lines that pass through the center and the vertices of your box. Okay, now, looking at this one, we said positive dominates. So in my graphing form, my x is the positive, the y is the negative. So does this open up and down or left and right? That's a decision you have to make. Well, positive dominates, so it's on the x. So this graph's going to open left and right. So when you go to graph this, it's kind of going to be like a sideways parabola that gets really, really close to your asymptotes but never touches. Alright, that's what an asymptote is. It approaches that line. It gets really, really, really close as it goes on. It gets so close but it'll never touch it. Alright, and then so we said left and right, so it's going on both sides. Alright, so we are going to get into the focal points and how to find them in our foci, but we're going to do that in class tomorrow together because of what I said up here really explains the properties of the graphs, and I want to be able to field your questions and really get into it. Alright, so we're going to talk about how to find those tomorrow, but I want to make sure we're good with this process. So let's do one more together. This is kind of the nuts and bolts, so when you get to class tomorrow, you know exactly how to work with hyperbolas, and then we can talk about all the details and get that in there a little before I allow you to work. So let's go 4x squared minus y squared plus 4y equals negative 12. Alright, so complete the square. 4x squared, well, there's no x here now, so we're going to leave that alone. And here there's a negative 1 in front, so I got to take out a negative 1. I'm going to get y squared minus 4y. Okay, we can't complete the square here because there's no x term. Here, half of 4 is 2 squared. So we're going to add 4. 4 times negative 1, I'm subtracting 4 over here. So I get minus, and to factor this, I get y minus 2 squared equals negative 16. Alright. Now we want it equal to 1, so I'm going to divide everything by negative 16. So 4 divided by negative 16 is negative x squared over 4, so 1/4. Negative and a negative gives me plus y minus 2 over 16 equals 1. Alright, so now we got to write the whole term squared. So that's opposite of x over 2 squared plus y minus 2 over 4 squared equals 1. Now I'm in graphing form. So my center here is 0 because there's no number with my x. Opposite of negative 2 is positive 2. Radius of my x is 2. R sub y is 4. So when we go to graph, this graph's going to be smaller. So we don't need too many tick marks. So my center is 0, 2. Radius x is 2, so I'm going to go right 2, left 2. Y is 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Draw your box. Okay, again, the dash box just helps us find our asymptotes. Alright, now, who dominates? Positive dominates. Positive is with our y, so my graph's going to open up and down this time. So my graph approaches my asymptotes. So this was an ellipse that was stretched up and down until it broke. Okay, again, you are going to have focal points. Alright, and your foci, your focal points are always going to be inside of your graph. I can't stress that enough. They're always going to fall inside of your graph. So we'll talk about adding and subtracting all that stuff tomorrow. But foci are always in your graphs. And we're going to get there tomorrow in class. We're going to really hit on that hard together before we get moving. Alright, it was a long video, but hope you got it. See you tomorrow.